Welcome back to the Brampton Focus All Candidate Debate for Brampton 2015. My name is Michael A. Charbon. Welcome back. And we will continue our questioning with Mr. Badar Shamim. Badar.
So Canada and Ontario have a long history of trading. From the days of Hudson Bay Company to today, Canada is known for trading. In recent years, we have signed a number of trade agreements. The two prominent trade deals that are currently being discussed and are gaining quite a bit recognition is the CETA agreement with the European Union as well as the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement. Starting with NDP, if I may ask how your party looks at those trade agreements in terms of balancing the interests of Canadian businesses growing abroad, as well as protecting Canadian interests, especially as they might relate to foreign entities suing Canadian government against certain regulations necessary for our own economy.
Amarjeet Singh from the NDP.
Well, Trans-Pacific Partnership, the Conservatives were late to join in that partnership talk, putting Canada at disadvantage, joining US-led in negotiations. It was a bit too late, and we need to protect our dairy farming and our farmings produce, so that whenever we need to do any international trade deals, we have to protect Canadian businesses, especially manufacturing and farmings as well. CETA, as you have mentioned, it was in the process, but Canadians know very little about it. The deals are being done behind closed doors. Once we know the text of that agreement, we can have a better talk on it, or we can give a better view on it. But NDP will work in national trades for the benefit of Canadian citizens and Canadian companies. And while doing this trade, we would like to take a control of our natural resources. We don't want to give our natural resources control to someone else and do a business here, give them a clean resources. If we send them create jobs in Canada, then instead of giving our raw material to outsiders so they can have a job somewhere else other than Canada. So we are agreeing with doing trades, but take a control of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Amarjeet. Rebuttal from Saul Butcher from the Greens, please.
Okay, actually, I'd like to thank Mr. Sanger for a good comprehensive answer on those agreements. One of the things that, to add to what he said actually, because our position is similar, what you have to understand about some of the trade agreements we've been negotiating recently is that they interfere with Canadian sovereignty. You may have heard this about the agreement we negotiated with China, which was ratified by Cabinet in secret and which we're locked into for 30 years. It allows Chinese state-owned companies to essentially sue us if we cause them to lose profits by passing laws, including laws that protect our environment or our labor rights. They can take us to a secret arbitration process. It's not a court, it's a secret arbitration, and we can owe them money. Now that's got to be the most terrible agreement you could possibly negotiate. What you're saying is, China, you can be in charge over a few of our laws. We don't need to be anymore. So protecting not just our industries, but our sovereignty is absolutely essential in all future trade agreements we negotiate.
Thank you, Mr. Butcher. Thank you, Mr. Butcher. Final rebuttal, Raj Grewal from the Liberals, please.
Simply said, Canada is a trading nation, and international trade agreements are good for our economy, and they create job creation. Something that we all need to know is that exporting industries pay 50% higher wages than non-trading industries. So we need to support international trade agreements, but more importantly, not like the Harper government's done for the last 10 years in a secret, not publicly open way. The Liberal Party is open to ensuring that all trade agreements have an open and transparent agreement process to ensure that all Canadians are involved in the process.
I'm going to give Amarjeet just one more comment coming back. Go ahead, please.
At the Foreign Investment Promotion and Protection Act, Liberals joining hands with Conservatives to defeat NDP motion, which would prevent the ratification of Canada-China FIPA. So negotiations were done, and NDP wanted to know what was in there. NDP brought motion, and Liberals were against it.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to our next question. Sophia Brown-Ramsey, your question, please.
Thank you very much. So, about a couple weeks ago, the provincial government started a series of consultations on street checks and carding. And this now seems to be at the forefront. It has been all over the media, looking at how carding, how street checks has been affecting our Black and brown citizens here in Brampton as well, here in Peel. I'm wondering where you, as a party, or even individuals, up to you how you want to answer this, I'm wondering where you stand on this, and I'm wondering how you see how we can work together as a community to affect change and be a little bit more impactful so our Black and brown citizens are not feeling disengaged and not a part of their own community.
Who would you like to direct us to?
So I will start. I will start with the NDP.
Okay, thank you for your question, Sophia. It's a very important issue, as you articulated. It affects many of us in Brampton. And I think the biggest thing, and one of the most recent things that have happened, of course, is our MPP, Jagmeet Singh, has been a champion, and the NDP has been absolutely clear that carding must end. So through the consultations that the Liberal government is moving forward on, time and time again, they have heard that it's not a question of revising, making changes, but carding is not constitutional and it impacts Black and brown communities disproportionately. It must stop. So Mr. Singh, we believe at the federal level that the NDP at the federal level needs to work and continue to consult with our communities to listen. It's important who that candidate and that MP is, because that diverse perspective must be there. Without the experiences of having, that experience of carding, being stopped, you don't know. You can't advocate and you can't fight. And the NDP party really ensures that our diverse team of candidates for Brampton and for Peel can speak to the issue. My son is 13. It's an issue for me. I'm always worried and concerned when he is walking down the street as he gets older that police may stop him and question him. How do we deal with that, right? Without me being at the table, where would that perspective be? So we're clear. I think the other thing that's important and connected indirectly is the issue of the long-form census and data collection. Without data, without proper data, without knowing who's in our communities, you cannot make good decisions, right? You can't make good decisions and really know what's going on in the community.
Thank you, Ms. Patterson. A rebuttal from Ruby Sahota from the Liberals, please.
I've recently attended a few events on this matter, one that was right here. I do believe it's a very serious concern in our community. I used to be a public defender for juveniles, and I know how it could impact the lives of young people. So as a mom, it is something that concerns me a lot as well. I think we need to, make sure that this policy does end. Of course, the Liberal Party is a strong advocate of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and treating each and every individual equally. So our stance on when it comes to carding, especially my personal stance, and I can speak for the party as well, is to make sure that everyone has an equal opportunity for success and isn't prejudiced or biased by, any authorities out there. So we do need to bring this to a stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sahota. Final rebuttal on this. Sean Hatton, please, from the Green.
Carding is utter garbage, especially in a community such as Brampton, in a country such as Canada, where we are so diverse. We come from different ethnic backgrounds. I have been a victim of carding, not only from police, but at the airport. I always have that extra random security check, and I traveled a lot in my previous role as a TV host, and it always happened. And, I became used to it. It just became part of traveling, but I could see the first few times going through and being like, oh, now I have to go into this special customs room. I have to tell this man who has never seen entertainment in the last 25 years what a Game Boy Advance is. I have to explain to him that this is not a dangerous item. So There you go.
Thank you, Mr.
I think we're all in
Hugman.
agreement.
Good luck with your game.
I just have a follow-up. So on the 25th of this month at the Peel region, 10 Peel, there will be discussions around Cardin there. Am I going to see any one of you guys who support that, 9:30 in the morning at 10 Peel? I think we need the
What's
faces.
the date again, please?
The September 25th, Friday, September 5th, 9:30. We will be doing a presentation to the Peel Police Board around that. So I'd love to see you guys there. Any show of hands? Thank you. I appreciate it. It's on TV. Take their names down.
Wow.
You guys all saw that?
Sophia, that was very political, and you're on the panel. That was very nicely done. Nicely done. Mr. Spider-Jones, sir, next question coming from you.
That was your plug for tonight, part of the advertisement. I want to talk a bit about the conservatives and their get tough on crime thing. Of course, they're not here to discuss that tonight, but I got to tell you what, I'm an ex-convict, and most people that read my book and know my life story know that I spent 7 years in jail. I'm an ex-con. It's very difficult for ex-cons when you get out of jail to find a decent job. Most people won't hire you. But the thing is, the Department of Correctional Services of Ontario, of course, that's the Liberals, have employed my services over the past 6-7 years, and I've traveled across our province and some Millhaven, Joyceville, Collins Bay, Kingston before it was closed down, and the list goes on because I've been in prisons all over North America speaking with young people that really want to be rehabilitated, and when they come out of prison, they want to be able to assimilate back into the system. The problem is, when they're spending this time in prison, they're not being rehabilitated. There's no emphasis on skilled trades or whatever it takes, so that when I got out of prison, the reason I didn't go back was because I had someone in my corner. That's a different. That's a romance story, and my beautiful wife. But we need to look in that direction too, because ex-convicts are people too, and they come out, and we want to help them so they won't go back into the criminal element. We must begin in prison. And I want to go to the Green Party to start with this. Your thoughts on that, and perhaps which you would present in that area.
Carl Lacroix from the Green.
So when it comes to handling crime, a lot of crime comes from poverty. Crimes of poverty is a big source of a lot of the reason why we have people going to jail in the first place. So in terms of rehabilitation, we are definitely for rehabilitation rather than punishment, as we've seen from our current government. We want to see, while they're spending their time in incarceration, that there is a productive element there, so that then when they do eventually will come out of prison, that they can come to a society that can accept them, so that they're prepared to handle and deal with the ongoing issues as a citizen and not as a second-class ex-convict, because that's totally not fair to people who've just come out. I've got family who've gone through this element, and it not only is it already hard on the family level when you're trying to make connections with old friends, that's already tough. When you have to go to a job force and you've got that on your paper, it's just absolutely depressing. Now, I think the root of the problem really goes to getting people to not go to prison. That's really a big thing there. And as I mentioned with crimes of poverty, we need to start looking at why are some of these people going away? And a lot of the times, it's, as I've said, there's instances where people are stealing, and the stealing is because they can't afford to get by anymore. They can't afford in this economy. Our rate of inflation, the cost of living is becoming too high for for anybody to really afford, especially youth who are, that's a terrible thing to see youth go into through the criminal justice system. We need to try to make efforts to avoid that. As Pauline had mentioned earlier, the guaranteed livable income is one way to do this, to help them stay out. We also have a national youth work corps that will get people, or get youth especially, engaged in the workforce so that they can start being employed. It keeps them off the street, keeps them away from dangerous elements that lurk out there on the streets. It gets them more engaged and towards a more positive future.
Thank you, sir. We'll go to the NDP. Rosemary Keenan, please.
So just to expand on that, we know for a fact that the majority of young people in prisons are disadvantaged youth. They are First Nations youth, and disproportionately First Nations, and disproportionately kids of color. So the issue is not to put them in jail. The issue is we need to address those community services that are required. And in fact, both Conservative and Liberal governments have been cutting community services for over 20 years, cutting educational services, cutting health services, which includes mental health. And we need to re-establish those kinds of services and have a national strategy to make sure we support youth, we support mental health issues, and we support faith groups and other community groups dealing with those.
And final rebuttal on this, Ruby Sato from the Liberals.
I absolutely agree that the root of the problem is, people resort to certain means because of their background or the means that they have at the time. So we have to solve this through infrastructure, through economic growth, through the opportunity for jobs, apprenticeships, what we were talking about before, trade jobs. The Liberal Party will be investing $10 million a year to help Canadian youths in high trade to train them for trade jobs. So that's one way we can get these kids to, become an active part of our communities. Another way is through the funding for social services. That will be a part of our infrastructure funding. So I believe this plan that we have for infrastructure will help alleviate a lot of these problems, whether it be
The one thing I'm not hearing here, though, is I agree. It begins in the environment we're in, the environments they live in. A lot of that comes from there, but there are thousands upon thousands of young people in prison now. I'm talking about them. We're working on the ones that are going there and of course we need more youth initiatives. We need to empower them. We need to be devoted to that. And cutting programs doesn't help. But what I'm suggesting is, what about the ones that are already in prison? There's not very much going on in the area. That's what I want to hear. Because if they don't, they're going to come out and go right back into the same vicious circle.
Go ahead. Back to the NDP. Adoma?
So the challenge is that under the current government, of course, there is this focus on putting people away and this tough on crime approach. Even although violent crime has been decreasing, the amount of investment and money we have been putting into prisons and things like mandatory minimums is having that impact of having young people and others sit in jail for long periods of time without rehabilitation. And so the NDP absolutely believes in putting the focus on prevention and rehabilitation. So until you change the government and the approach and the philosophy, this will continue to happen.
So final point on this, I'm going to give this to Raj Grewal and the Liberals.
Over the past 10 years, we have a government that is putting money into building mega prisons when we have a declining crime rate. So the Liberal Party of Canada under Justin Trudeau is going to reverse that money into rehabilitation within the current system. So our current youth, people that are behind bars, have an opportunity to put their lives back on the right track. The Conservative government in the past 10 years has done nothing but put the fear in Canadians, whether it's mandatory minimums, when there are these huge omnibus bills. We need a culture change in government at the federal level to address problems like this, Spider. And the Liberal Party and Justin Trudeau are the only party with a real plan to ensure it gets done.
Thank you, Raj. All right, next question, Mr. Rick Drennan, please, sir.
Thank you very much. A brilliant political mind once said, without public support, you have nothing. It wasn't Donald Trump.
I knew you were going to invoke Donald Trump's name, Rick. I knew you were going to do that.
It was actually Abraham Lincoln. And why I'm talking about that is because people have become pretty cynical, especially the younger people in our society. And worst of all, they become apolitical. They don't want to get involved in elections. We see the numbers. I think the voters' turnouts in the federal elections are about 50%. Province, it's 40% or 42% and sinking. And at the municipal level, it's sometimes less than 20% as it was here in Brampton. We need some electoral reform. We are in the 21st century. I am a dinosaur, like Spider here, but we have these online stuff, like these smartphones and stuff like that. In Australia, they have mandatory voting. They get a 95% turnout. We can have online voting in Canada in the next election. What kind of an electoral reform would you advocate your party bring in to bring us into the 21st century? And let's start with the NDP.
Excellent question.
Well, good question. Electoral reform is required. It's long due, rather. NDP believes in proportional representation. So it is working in Germany and New Zealand. In fact, their turnout is increased by 7%. And NDP would bring that so every Canadian is heard. What is happening in the past? Conservatives got 39% of cast voting, and they got 54% of member of parliaments and 100% power. Canadians are disappointed with that. So 61% didn't want the Conservatives to win. They wanted someone else. So those Canadians are not being heard. They are being disappointed. And NDP is working on reform to bring a change so that next time we go for elections, so every Canadian vote, they'll be heard, and they would have a role to play when new laws or bills come in the parliament. So they are represented by the party they have voted for.
The one problem with proportional voting that some people bring up is that we'll never get anything done because we're going to have too many voices, always arguing at the moment that we're never going to get anything done. That's one of the rebuttals they have with that. They say because you have to elect someone, there has to be a captain at a ship. Not everybody can be the first mate. Otherwise, when the captain says duck and everybody says what, that's when the thing comes by and knocks you over into the water.
But if things are being done and being challenged in the courts, I don't think that works for Canadians. And courts are turning around the decisions were made in the parliament. That doesn't make a good impact on the international community as well as on the voters. A lot of our bills has gone to a court, especially for hijab. It went to a federal court, and federal court had overruled them and told them the individuals can wear a hijab in the ceremony of taking oath for a citizenship. If these bills were passed with the more than 50% of Canadians wanted that bill to be passed, I don't think we need to go to court.
Okay, I'm going to go to Raj Grewal, Liberals.
I think the question was about democratic reform. And let me be clear. Under the Liberal Party's government on October 19th, this will be the last election under the current system. We're going to do wide consultations all across this country to ensure that we engage our citizens in the democratic process. What's happening over the past 10 years is because it's Harper's voice being pushed down into your riding. And the clear example today is that there's a table missing of his candidates. Canadians, feel that the political system is cynical, like they are just so turned off about it. But Justin is inspiring Canadians through hope and hard work to get back involved in the Canadian process to ensure that your voice is heard. And that's why open, transparent government to ensure that each individual MP has an opportunity to raise its voice. Sorry, one last point. Justin Trudeau is the first MP that ensured all his expenses were posted online. Okay. That's leadership.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there. I'm going to go. We have one more final rebuttal from the Green. Mr. Carl Lacroix, please.
Yeah, so I just wanted to point it out, the first past the post system are majority government now, and this is what happens when we've got this. They're not here to speak. Following to another point, as well getting youth involved. I'm a 23-year-old. If you look at the median age of everybody who's sitting here, I think I represent the youth here. That was a big reason I decided to come out, to show that youth are still wanting to get involved here. Another point with proportional representation, the IDEA, which is the International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance, has shown that the average, with proportional representation, proportional representation, voter turnout is higher, and in fact, for youth, it's higher by 12% on the average for all industrialized countries.
Thank you. I have another internet question here, which I'm going to propose to each of the parties. There's been a lot of talk about the words surplus, deficit. Some people say we live in a society of entitlement. We spend and live beyond our means. Others say that it's time that we had to reconcile our budgets, don't go over budget, spend what we have, and be good with the money that we're given. Others would say that if you don't invest in our economy, we can't get it to get started again. I want each of you to comment. What is your position with regards to deficits? For how long, for how much, and why deficit? Why not play, as they would say, play fair for the budget that you have? I'll go to the NDP first, please.
So the New Democratic Party position on this is really quite clear. Thomas Mulcair has stated that we plan to run a balanced budget, not just for our first year, but for each of the 4 years that we would be in government. In addition to that, the New Democratic Party has a solid history of balanced budgets. In fact, not just our numbers, but also Department of Finance numbers shows that the party, when in power, that has the best record of balanced budgets is the New Democratic Party. Our hero in this one in particular is Tommy Douglas, who managed 17 balanced budgets in a row while bringing in the Medicare system. And so what it shows is that it is possible to properly manage an economy while also bringing in the social programs that we need to make sure that the quality of life improves.
So if I may interject, Mr. Singh, then what would you say to people who say you need to have a deficit to invest to kickstart the economy again, so you have to operate at a deficit?
And I understand that some people do make that argument. The travesty of that is that there was 6 years in a row of conservative deficits, and then we went into a recession. And so it would speak actually as a counterexample to that particular argument. In addition to that, I am deeply concerned about what the Liberal Party is proposing. In particular, one of the Liberal opponents tonight mentioned that they are planning to have modest deficits for the next 3 years. It's important to note that that modest deficit being spoken of is exactly $10 billion per year. I don't know about your pocketbook, but modest and $10 billion do not go together in mine. And so what it is, we want to ensure that the economics of the nation are properly run. We couldn't do it in our households. We couldn't do it in our businesses. And so we can't be running a deficit in that particular manner. Businesses, corporations, and people want to be able to invest in an environment that is solid and stable from an economic perspective, and balanced budgets are absolutely the way to make that happen.
Mr. Singh from the NDP, thank you. I will go to Mr. Grewal, Raj Grewal from the Liberals.
First and foremost, we're in a recession. And the only way the government can get us out of a recession is to invest in our country. There is no better time to invest than now. We have low interest rates. We have a low and declining GDP to debt ratio. The time to invest in our future is now. And the only party that's willing to do that is the Liberal Party of Canada.
But Mr. Grewal, if I may just interject, there's people
problem.
who would say, we don't have the dollars. We are already taxed. As soon as you start to invest and give more money, that's going to trickle down. Whether you take it from the 1% of the corporation, whether you add another % of tax, we're going to end up paying in the end, and we don't have enough money now. Some would say, if you're going to invest more, you're going to get us deeper in the ditch.
So the Liberal Party's been honest with Canadians and said that we're going to run 3 years of modest deficits. What the funny part of Mr. Martin Singh and Thomas Mulcair's plan is that their budget is based off a $67 barrel of oil. You know what the barrel of oil closed at today? $43. It dropped 4.7% in 1 day. It is forecasted to drop in the next 3 years. And you know what their budget forecast allows for? 67 next year, 72 the year after, and 78 in the year after that. How are they going to balance the budget that they're so committed to balancing when their budget doesn't make any sense, when their revenue forecasts are so off? I was a financial analyst for a Fortune 500 company. If my budget was off like that, I'd be fired at the end of the day. There's no way that they can pay for your spending promises and balance their budget. The only party that's being honest with Canadians to ensure that we're in a recession right now and we got to jumpstart our economy by investing $125 billion in infrastructure is the Liberal Party of Canada. And we all know as our households, anytime we want to expand our businesses, we have to take on a little bit more debt. And in order to do that in this climate, low interest rates, low net debt to GDP ratio. And this isn't just coming from me, it's coming from world-renowned economists. Paul Krugman of the New York Times, Larry Summers, who balanced the budgets in the United States as Treasury Secretary in the early 1990s, and David Dodge. These are world-renowned economists that say when the country is in a recession, the government needs to increase spending. And Liberal Party is the only party that's committed to ensuring that all Canadians have an opportunity to make the best of their opportunities.
Thank you, Mr. Grewal. I will go to the Green Party. So where do you stand on this?
Thank you. First of all, I'm getting a little tired of hearing that there's only one party or one person who's being honest. I think everybody up here is being reasonably honest with you about what their platform is, and maybe we could just leave that behind. Now, with regards to oil, if we want to talk about the price of a barrel of oil, there's only one party up here that's against all pipelines that are being proposed. So if you're worried about the price of oil, why are you pushing for approval of pipelines?
But if I may interject, as I did with the other two, I'm
Feel
not
free.
Just trying to be fair. Is it on budget? Is it over budget? Is it infrastructure? Pay as you go? Where does the Greens sit with regards to our dollar, our budget?
Okay, the Green Party is actually proposing, we have a fully costed platform already out, and we're proposing a surplus budget in all 4 years.
What's a surplus budget?
A budget with a surplus in each of the 4 years, which will allow us to pay down $30 billion of debt by the end of the term.
Okay.
And 25% of our debt has come in the last 10 years. We're at over $600 billion of national debt in this country, and we need to do something about that because that's a long-term problem that's creeping up on us.
Okay, well, you're the first party who said something about paying down our debt, interestingly enough. So I'll go back to the NDP for a rebuttal. Go ahead, Rosemary.
I just want to bring the idea of investment back to our Brampton communities here. I mentioned the affordable childcare, no more than $15 a day. That is an investment, a long-term investment. In Quebec, when they brought in affordable childcare, over 10 years, 70,000 women were able to re-enter the workforce. That generated good salaries, that generated tax revenues. And on the other hand of that, we need to expand our energy policy to include alternate energies, have innovation, research and development, and that's going to kickstart good jobs for our young people. Couple those two together, and we've got a great investment for the future.
Thank you. One more rebuttal from the Green. I'll go to Kyle Lacroix.
So in terms of energy investment, to follow up on that, the Green Party is really the only party that's gone ahead and said that we've got a fully costed platform and different social programs that we'll have set up for businesses, smaller businesses, to open up businesses in the green tech, to help encourage growth, entrepreneurs to encourage that growth so we can wean ourselves away from this oil addiction that we have. It's no good for the economy. It's no good for the environment. We know that the prices are it's just putting all our eggs in one basket, and it's not a good idea. So in terms of the energy investment, I would love to see Canada go in that direction. We see China making billion-dollar investments into this area, and it's not going to be around forever. We need to get on board on this boat of the clean energy revolution.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions now that we got from the folks in the audience, and I think that's pertinent because they're here now. First one's from Stan. Stan says, with the loss of the long-form census and disregard for scientific-based factorial evidence and data, there is an increase in public policy to be based on ideology rather than public good. What would your party do for sound research and scientific data to formulate public policy and plan for the future? They got rid of the census. So let's start with the NDP and we'll go around the horn. First to the NDP, please.
The NDP has a commitment to reinstate the mandatory long-form census. I worked with my church group on bringing this forward at the provincial and national level to make sure that we reinstate the census. It has had the effect of excluding vulnerable people, excluding remote communities, excluding the poorest people from being recorded and in terms of the services that they need, the infrastructure supports that they need. And we need all voices in Canada, all communities represented in Canada. We must reinstate this census. Over 800 organizations, professional organizations, church groups, university-level organizations, community groups have insisted that this should not have been scrapped. The NDP will reinstate the mandatory long-form census to represent all Canadians.
Very good. Thank you, Rosemary. Ramesh from the Liberals, I'm going to ask you, we have not yet heard from you, so I want to hear from you. Where is your stance, sir, with regards to the census?
We liberals, we have a plan to bring back the long form census. We will go for that. That's our plan.
Okay. I'll go to the Green, please.
The Green Party also believes that the long-form census should never have been scrapped. It's the basis for research, for planning, for social programs, and also historical things. We also believe in evidence-based decision-making. We certainly don't agree with the scientific community being silenced, and we think that it's a criminal thing to do. And we really, really want the scientists to be giving us the information so that we can make, as I said, evidence-based decisions in government.
Thank you,
Certainly.
Pauline. This next question is from Nassar, another one of the folks who have attended our debate here today. What do you think about current immigration policy, and what changes, if any, would you like to progress, support, or eliminate? Obviously, the Peel region, particularly Brampton, very multicultural. We have many people from many countries who come here. What is your position, and what do you think we should do better, less, or more of with regards to immigration? Go ahead, Mr. Singh.
So immigration policy, unfortunately, has gone very much off the track under the Conservative government. And quite right you are, Michael, that this is particularly pertinent to the Brampton region. What we want to make sure that we have is a fair and equitable policy. And what we notice now is that that's exactly what we do not have. The New Democratic Party has undertaken a plan to put family sponsorship and spousal sponsorship right at the very front to make sure that those people who have been working very hard and paying taxes here in this country have an opportunity to bring their families over to join them. The current plan on the Conservative Party is to have a super visa, basically a 10-year visa that comes over, whereby people can come over and visit. I don't know about you, but I've never taken a 10-year vacation, so it's hard to make sense out of how this really works. In addition to that, what happens is that for those of you who've gone through it, you know, in fact, that there is huge, enormous, in fact, health insurance fees that come along with that, thousands of dollars, basically taxing these people into poverty in order to be able to have the opportunity to come. If I may speak on a personal note, you would expect a system to get better over time. When my wife and I got married some years ago in 1997, the spousal class sponsorship took 7 to 8 months. In 2003, 2004, it had gotten better, which would be our expectation, to about 3 months. And then the tragedy occurred with the Conservative government coming into power, where now people wait between 18 months to 2 years for their spouses to come join them in Canada. It's absolutely unworkable, and it costs an enormous amount of money to the economy overall and to the quality of life of the people involved. We want to make sure that we have a compassionate, fair, and equitable immigration system here in Canada. Thank you.
Martin Singh from the NDP. Let us go to Ramesh Sangha, please, from the Liberals.
Immigration system, it was initiated in 1972 by the Liberal Party. And now from there onward, it was open from the whole world, people can come. But from the last 10 years, we see that there is a great change in it. And this conservative government has cut the limbs of the actually immigration system. We say that we will bring more and more families to have a reunification of the families. Because Section 12 of the Act says that there should be reunification of the families. If we don't do that, we are not only that one way, other way, I can say it helps the people, it helps the new immigrants when they come, bring their families here, bring their siblings. By cutting this system, now we feel that those people, those who are entitled to come here, they are already gone. They are not able to come. And we will work for that. We will spend more and more infrastructure, more spending to see that applications are being processed in time. People are getting the immigration well in time. People are not being harassed. And we will quash that bill, quash that temporary visa system, which they are getting, the pilot project and other things. Those will be quashed. We don't want that.
Thank you, Mr. Sangha. Now we'll go to Carintha Gomanath. Did I say Carintha? Carthinka, I beg your pardon.
Thank you. First and foremost, there has been cutbacks in the immigration services that as of 2010 till now, there's cutbacks every year, but especially this year, $14 billion in cutbacks for essential services where immigrants require to integrate into the society. As a refugee myself, my parents and I, we fled Sri Lanka during the Civil War, and it was difficult for us without, if I could imagine if I didn't have the services right now, it would have been difficult for us to integrate into the society. As for the refugee status of the Syrian refugee crisis itself, we need to include another category in the immigration policy to include natural disasters. We don't have that in the policies for immigration policies. We encourage family reunification. There are about 200,000 Canadians who are not documented, so they have no status in Canada. So we need to make sure that they are put back into the system and they are paying taxes, so they better get the services that they have put into. Another thing is we have a highly trained and skilled immigrant workforce, and we need to put, in terms of licensing, it takes a while to get these licensing, and there's a lot of issues in regards to getting the employment that people have, for example, teachers, lawyers, judges from another country who come in here. They have a hard time integrating because of these extra backlogs in licensing practices. So we have to make sure that we can speed up the licensing process so that they can integrate into society.
Karthika Gobenha from the Green Party, thank you. You're watching the 2015 All Candidates debate from Brampton. We'll be back with lots more right after this.